The untapped millennial aesthetic market. Are you missing the boat here, guys? I'm so excited to have special guest Audrey Neff, who's the Senior Director of Marketing for PatientNow. She really is the guru, a national speaker all across the country. And in fact, I know that she even speaks across the pond as well on this specific topic. Welcome, Audrey.
Thank you, Caitlin. It is an honor and a pleasure to be here with you.
Wonderful. Well, let's dive right into it because I know how passionate you are about getting aesthetic practices to really take a closer look and how much revenue potentially they're leaving on the table by not tapping in to the millennial market.
Yeah, no, I love it. And it's a topic, just like you said, I am immensely passionate about it. I've been speaking on it for probably 7 or 8 years now. Started talking on it before anyone else was talking about it. And what really drew me into, deciding to really dig deep on this market was because I remember years ago when I first started, speaking and educating in the industry, the perception of millennials was very negative. Everyone that talked about the millennial consumer, it had so many negative connotations associated to it, whether it was a speaker on the stage telling people and practices to avoid millennials, they're cheap, they're not brand loyal. There were all these negative stigmas attached to them. And I remember thinking there to myself, like, I'm a millennial and I'm an aesthetic consumer, and I couldn't disagree with all of these points more that were being made by people at the time. So I took it upon myself to be like, if no one's going to talk about this market, then I will. So fast forward a couple of years, I ended up doing some peer-reviewed market research for the International Society of Plastic and Aesthetic Nurses, and it was all around generational aesthetics. So if we look at the 3 consumer groups with full purchasing power right now, we have millennials, Gen X, and boomers. Gen Z does not have full purchasing power yet. I think a lot of people think that they do, and they do not. If we look at those 3 generations, a couple of years ago when I finished the research, millennials had around 22% of the market share in North America for aesthetics. Fast forward, two years later or so to today in 2025, they have a little bit over than 30% now. So a little over the third of the total market share in aesthetics, but that number is going to be increasing moving forward. So if we look at Gen X and boomers, their market share, they already hit their peak and it's decreasing. So there's only one generation right now that has full purchasing power that will be increasing their market share, and that's millennials. And a lot of us think millennials are really young, and really they're not anymore. It's 29 to 44. And with them comes a lot of unique nuances in how they choose aesthetic providers and what they gravitate towards when they're actually receiving treatment. So, there's so many different avenues I could go in, but if we think about, the core values of millennials, the core values I typically talk about are authenticity, relatability, connectivity, and experiences. So like they crave all of these different things. They want to be, first of all, they want to relate to you. We're in a human and people-driven industry. I know you and I would both agree with that. People want to connect with people, and millennials will spend more money with a provider and a team, a practice, if they believe they're going to get a better experience out of that. And whether it's a bad experience or a horrible experience, the common denominator is always a person, right? Even if it's injector, right? It could be an SE, it could be whatever it may be. So there's a lot of different avenues we can go into. You can let me know where you want me to start.
No, absolutely. That's great. What I would love to hear a little bit more about the shift in services that you are seeing millennials gravitate to. Because I think about, even though technically I'm a millennial, I'm literally at the very end of it. And I think about what, maybe some of my friends and coworkers that, are 10, 12, 13 years younger than me, the services that they're already getting was not the services that I was getting at that age because I just didn't know better yet. It wasn't as accepted or the norm. And so that's why I think what you teach is so relevant because the fact of the matter is these practice owners and providers that are in their 40s and 50s forget about those in their 30s because when they were 30, it wasn't the thing that we were doing yet,
Yeah.
but now it is.
Yeah. And I love that you brought that up because something that I always preach when I talk about this is lifetime value. And so when we think about a consumer, if a consumer enters the aesthetic marketplace at a younger age, they're going to have a higher lifetime value. And
Mhm.
so I always like to start there because obviously, Gen X is still a core part of a lot of our aesthetic practices, as well as, boomers, even though that's kind of the eldest of all of the generations in aesthetics. But if we think about millennials, if they're because of the rise of social media, because of the rise of the direct to consumer marketing from pharmaceutical companies and manufacturers that we all know and love in the aesthetic space, the modern consumer now is very aware of aesthetic treatments and procedures, and they have become very much a normal part of a consumer's health, beauty, and wellness routines in life. And you and I, we probably remember back in the day. I still remember when Brooke Shields came out as like the spokesperson for Juvederm. I remember like sitting on the couch watching this commercial, and I still remember it was like, everyone will notice, but no one will know, was like their tagline. That was when like injectables were first starting to get pushed. But back then, because it was very hush hush, people didn't want to then their neighbor to know that they had an aesthetic treatment done. Where the cool thing about millennials is they like want to shout it from the rooftops. I feel like, they love sharing their experiences on social media. They love saying, okay, yes, if you provided amazing results to me, I will consent to using you to use my photos on social media and external marketing efforts. So I think even though they come with a lot of unique nuances, two of the really important things I always like to talk about is just lifetime value, because if you do capture a millennial consumer, or even if we want to go older Gen Z, the older Gen Z, which a lot of those traits and characteristics will be very similar to the younger millennials as well, but you're going to have a higher lifetime value, which will in return fuel the future of your practice over the next 5, 10, 15 years. So that's one thing I think that's really exciting. Also, the whole prevention is cheaper than correction, saying that we hear a lot in the industry. A lot of millennials are craving aesthetic treatments to prevent the aging process, right? So the average neurotoxin user, the average HA filler user, even biostimulators. I started using biostimulators at I think age 29. So, we're seeing this very comprehensive approach to not just preventative treatments in aesthetics, but also a way to age very gracefully, or age like fine wine, which I think all of us want to do. We all want to age like fine wine. So I think through the emergence of new products coming to the market, we're now seeing a very holistic 360 approach with the integration of wellness into the industry as well, which millennials are very, very interested in. Additionally, we all want to feel good or feel great on the outside and on the inside. I think with the emergence of all of these, it becomes the sky is really the limit for practices to capitalize on it. They just need to recognize this as an opportunity and then ensure that they have very specific tactics and strategies of what they're going to do from a marketing standpoint, to a consultation standpoint, and then to a retention standpoint in their practice to keep those millennial patients in for the rest of their journey in aesthetic medicine.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you talked and hit on lifetime value of a patient, because the reality is that it's 5 times more expensive to get a new patient than it is to retain
Yeah.
a patient at the end of the day. So, how can we attract more millennials into our practice? What does those tactics, those marketing strategies look like?
Yeah, definitely. So definitely when it comes to digital marketing, which every, practice in the entire world needs to be working with a marketing agency, right? Unless you plan to do everything yourself, I typically don't recommend that unless you are a digital marketing mastermind. Very few providers are going to be that. You need to surround yourself with people that are experts in what they do. So the one piece of advice I would have is if you can't get to 100 by doing everything yourself. You're going to need to surround yourself with partners and vendors that can help you. So from that side, I'm not going to go into SEO and website and things like that, but those are things that you do need to have, right? You need to have a really great marketing agency to help you out there. Two interesting things that I hit on a lot, and this was data pulled from a consumer analysis survey that we did on the RX photo side of our business a couple of years back, where we actually surveyed 1,000 millennial consumers who were researching cosmetic treatments online. There were a couple of different questions in the survey that they did, but one of them that popped out the most to me was when they are on a provider's website, the two things, or when they are researching providers online, the two factors that influence their decision-making the most when it comes to just initially reaching out to a practice to schedule a consultation were reviews and before and after photos. So these are two things that a lot of practices don't realize have a huge impact on a decision being made from a pre-patient standpoint. And the good news is they're two very easy, relatively easy things that you can fix in your practice. So the first thing I would say is right now, go, like any practice who's listening to this, go to your Google business profile and see what your reviews are, right? That's where the majority of consumers are going to be reading reviews. And we can ask ourselves, I mean, all of us read reviews. If we're going to a restaurant, we read reviews. The same concepts apply, especially in aesthetic medicine, where treatments are, come in at a higher cost. It's medicine at the end of the day. I mean, you can pay me to go see an aesthetic provider and get a medical treatment if I had not looked at photos and read reviews of the practice and the provider. So the first thing is Google reviews. You need to make sure that you have a constant and consistent flow of them. The benchmark or the goal I would like to tell everyone is the first goal, if you're starting at 0, the first macro goal, like the big goal you want to hit, is triple digits. So 100 would be your first goal. And that's just a consumer perception thing. Like we instantly triple digits just in a matter of a split second. It just builds more trust in our minds from our perception when we're researching. So Google reviews are huge. If you want to start with micro goals, if that seems like way too far-fetched of a leap, then start as your first goal 25, then 50, then 75, work your way up. And then don't stop there. I think once you start getting into the 300s, you start putting yourself in a very, very competitive territory. So reviews are one thing I talk about a lot. In terms of gaining reviews, you need to have scalable processes in the practice. So you need to have some type of system that can help automate review requests for you. And then you need to have talk tracks in place, right? When are you going to ask patients to leave your review, and how are you going to ask them? You'll always want to make sure that you're asking them after they've already received a phenomenal experience, right? You don't want to ask Susan to leave you a review if she's in the middle of her laser treatment series she's getting and she's walking out and she just got a cool peel and she's totally red and in a little bit of pain. Susan, you want to leave us a review? So timing is something else that is key. We want to ensure that we ask them when they have, they have final results, they're feeling amazing, and they're on cloud 9. So combined with internal efforts and technology, you can no doubt increase Google reviews. And then the other mistake I see is just not prioritizing before and after photos. So the big thing, and you and I both agree with this, I know for sure, is just the big thing with photos is just lack of consistency. And so I recommend RX photo is the product I recommend. Of course, I'm biased to it. But we need to make sure that we have ways that we can ensure consistency and standardization through all of our before and after photos, right? So that goes into lighting, that goes into background, that goes into angles, and all of these different things. And then everybody needs to be trained on that process. What tool are you going to use? Make sure that you're storing them in HIPAA compliant areas, right? Storing them on your phone camera roll is not HIPAA compliant. And a lot of people do that. So something to definitely think about, but then also use those photos as a marketing tool. Because going back to Millennial, since one of their core values is relatability, they want to see patients just like them that received treatments to fix issues or conditions that they are having just like them. So, if someone is a 35-year-old female Fitzpatrick 1 struggling with hyperpigmentation and melasma, they want to see other patients similar to them that received treatment from your practice and what the results were. So utilizing photos on your website, utilizing them on social media. If you are utilizing them on social media, I recommend describing the treatment plan. It doesn't need to be in super big detail, but at least shed some light on the time frame and what different modalities and retail products were used to achieve those outcomes, to better set expectations that when a patient comes in, they understand it is a long-term commitment to get the results that they are looking for, right? I think a lot of us do deal with difficult and somewhat crazy patients in this industry. We all have them. The patient comes in, they think one syringe of filler is all they need, right? And so how do we combat this? The way to combat this is through education in a pre-patient way as well. So if you are posting photos, I do recommend describing the treatment plan so you can actually start to educate on, okay, if I want to achieve these results, this was done over a 12-month time frame, combined with neuromodulators, biostimulators, energy-based devices, and retail skincare, right? So now you're educating up front. So when they do come in for a consultation, a lot of providers will find that that conversation becomes a lot easier versus not setting expectations up front on social. So those are two really big things, I think from a marketing standpoint, can really move the needle with millennial patients.
Okay, I totally see your point of like that gateway to millennials is through reviews and before and after photos. And I love how you broke it down, really the importance of before they even coming in, having the right technology, having the right processes and SOPs, training your team, scripting it out, really orchestrating that journey start to finish for your staff and for your patient to really set them up for success. It's not as simple as just being like, okay, staff, go, ask for a review, go take a
Yeah.
before and after picture, which we see so often and they're pissed, right? Of like, I told my team to do it and they're just not doing it. But leadership isn't fulfilling their responsibility to really set their team up for success. And then part two of it is actually using them as a tool to get bigger treatment plans, to get more patients in the door, right? It's twofold. They either suck on the front side or they suck on the back side. And we see providers give up on asking for reviews or before and after photos because whether it's the marketing department or the leadership, not use it right to its fullest extent. So they're like, why do it? Right. So start to finish, we have to have those processes and accountability in place for this to really work for them. Right.
Yeah, I totally agree. And to build on what you said too, is, and I hear this all the time, is the biggest pushback I hear in the field or when I'm talking to practices of why they're not doing, why aren't you asking for reviews, right? If they have very little, the answer I hear 9 out of 10 times is, I'm afraid of getting a bad review. And it's like, if you're going to first of all, I mean, there's so many sayings out there, like fear, like don't let fear get in the way. Like you have to move past the concept of fear, right? If you want to achieve anything in business or life. So they use that fear of getting a negative review as the reason why they don't want to ask people for reviews. When in reality, we need to totally flip that script and think of it as, okay, we're all human. We're all running a business and there are difficult consumers no matter where we're located. Do you think at some point everyone's going to get a negative review? Absolutely. Even if you're the best injector in the entire world, you will at some point in your years of practice get a negative review. So I think that's how providers and business owners need to think about it is, I know I'm going to get a couple negative reviews. What can I do to be proactive with this to combat that? And the only way to combat negative reviews is to constantly pump out positive reviews to level the playing field back down. And so for every one negative review you get, you want at least 17 positive reviews to outweigh that one negative review. And we all know people are going to get a negative review. Honestly, from my standpoint, if I even saw a practice on Google and they had 5 stars, not one negative review in the entire hundreds of reviews, it almost feels like disingenuous, like you almost don't trust it. So I think in this industry, we just need to be okay knowing that we will get a couple of negative reviews and we just need to be proactive with our strategy. So that's my one piece of advice there, just because I hear all the time, people just have this huge fear of getting that negative review. So therefore they don't want to ask for them. And then with photos too, on the consent pushback I hear is, well, my patients always say no, they don't want their photos taken. And so what I tell them in this case is you need to have 2 different consent conversations. One, you have a consent as a provider to patient relationship. You obviously need to treat them. And then to document their journey over time internally, right? So that needs to be articulated to them. And then obviously from the marketing standpoint, I always advise practices, you don't necessarily need to ask them for the consent to use their photos in the first consultation because they haven't even received treatment from you. So I find the conversation is much easier if you hold off on that conversation until Susan has completed her initial treatment plan, her skin is glowing, she's feeling phenomenal. Then if you bring up that conversation and ask for her consent permission to use her photos in marketing efforts after she's already, received phenomenal results, you'll find that conversation to be a lot easier to get patients to say yes. So those are two little pieces of advice I would give for anyone that's really freaked out around getting a negative review, or they just assume nobody will consent to letting you use photos for marketing efforts.
I think that's powerful, that two-part consent, right? Because I agree with you, is like before you've built that relationship or got them that result, they might be more hesitant. I also think it's really in how you approach and have that conversation and making them feel like honored that you are utilizing them as like a success story, right? And you
Yeah.
see that with some providers out there that like they're begging to be like posted on their page. They're begging to do, like
Yes.
highlight me as your patient testimonial, right? Like because they feel like honored and cool that they were a part of that journey with them. It's really how you position it. And if you have this
Yeah.
scarcity mindset, because maybe you have fear of putting your own results out there, you're like bleeding that onto your patients.
Totally. It's like FOMO almost. Like you want people to have FOMO too. And I feel like when we talk about culture and things like that, I think as well, like your patients are a part of that culture as well. And I think it's very empowering for a consumer to come to you, go through a treatment plan or whatever it may be, medical weight loss plan, whatever it is, and to get these phenomenal results. Like that's empowering. And I think just like you said, if we can use those as a part of our talk tracks and create really exciting and amazing experiences and have a really amazing social presence and things like that, then patients will buy into that. And then they will allow you to use their photos. I know my provider, who I love dearly, I mean, she has like printed before and after photo booklets she uses in the practice. I think it's a genius idea. And I'm like, please put my photo in there because I want other people to see the results I had, because I know how much better I felt. And from a confidence standpoint, going through, years of a treatment protocol, that I want everyone else to get that same experience. So I think there's a lot of ways that people can navigate that discussion for sure.
Absolutely. And it starts with sharing your own journey and results as well. And then having your staff do that,
Yes.
right? Like you can't be looking the way you're looking and not having all these treatments as well. And your patients want to see that you're doing the exact same things, right? Like how many times have we were like, I want to look like you, like whatever you're having for breakfast, that's what I want for breakfast
Yeah.
as well. Right. But if
Yeah.
we don't share that, right? And or we put shame around sharing what we're doing and getting done, right? Of course, your patient is going to have that similar mindset.
Yeah. And to build on that, like, just like you said, your team members should be advocates of your practice. So, every single provider, if you have a team around you, treat your team, right? Wait, obviously, whether you're going to do it at a discounted rate or at cost, whatever it is, that's something for, them to figure out. But treat your staff. And the cool thing about millennials is a lot of our staff members in a typical practice will likely be millennials, right? So once again, it goes back to that relatability core value. When I'm coming in and your front desk, person, Kelly, has glowing skin, and I'm like, oh, Kelly, what are you doing? Or maybe when she's, introducing me to the practice, she's welcoming me with a beverage, walking me over to sit down. She talks about some of the recent treatments she had done and this new device that you just got in the practice that she had this phenomenal experience with. So I think the more advocates that we can build for our brand, I find that advocacy, both internally and externally with patients, is another great way to build your millennial patient base as well.
So you've spoken all over the country on this particular topic, and I'm sure that people have come up to you after, taking your practices and best strategies and shared with you some of the success stories and impact that it's had on their practice. And I'd love for you to just kind of share what you're hearing out there when people are really taking this millennial market seriously.
Yeah, two things come to mind. The first is just purely a mindset shift of looking at the millennial group as a whole as a very valuable consumer group that's going to fuel the growth of your practice, right? Because we for some reason that all those negative stigmas still attach to that term millennials. So one, I would say it's just a mindset shift. And then the second thing that I've worked with a lot of our clients on over the last couple of years has been the adoption and implementation of membership programs. Membership programs are statistically shown. So 81% of millennials are incredibly influenced by membership programs. So it's a part of the peer-reviewed research I did a couple of years back. And so if we think about memberships, one thing I want to point out is you don't need to necessarily call it a membership. A lot of providers and practices, sometimes they just don't like that term. And so I say that's okay. You don't call it a membership. I actually advise you don't call it a membership because that's a very generic term. Create some very unique, sophisticated name that builds value in what it is that you're going to offer in that program. So if it's, an elite VIP aesthetic club, whatever it is, something that creates sophistication and luxury, because that is what we do in our practice, right? We're in a luxury type of retail medicine is what I would really, really put it at. So from the membership component, there's different models that you can obviously build. But in working with some of my clients over the last couple of years, I mean, we've been able to grow top line revenue by 20% in a single 12-month time span just by implementing a very high value membership program that people will buy into. So that is something I have seen astronomical success with some of the practices I've been working with over the last couple of years is just creating some type of membership program, right? And you can use membership programs in conjunction with those comprehensive treatment plans. And I actually find it that if you do have some type of membership program, whether it's a monthly fee or a banking model, if you have those programs in place, I actually find that you can increase conversion and buy-in with longer term comprehensive treatment plans, because if you build out the treatment plan, it's going to be a 12-month plan, let's call it. You bring up the membership program you have, and you have a talk track around it. Is actually, we also have this incredible membership VIP program that 80% of our patients are actually a part of. You can join today. It's, $150 a month, but you're going to receive VIP pricing on all of the treatments, procedures, and retail products that we're actually recommending to you in your treatment plan. So if you're going to actually commit to this investment over time, being a part of a program like this will actually yield cost savings for you, right? So then it's like a no-brainer in that case as well. If I want to commit to this, there is a cost associated, but I can actually join this membership program that a practice has, and it brings me value, and I actually can save money over time by committing to it. So I find that with the introduction and implementation of membership programs as well, millennials are very attracted to that whole concept of loyalty programs and membership programs. I mean, I'm probably a part of 10 different membership programs. I don't even know, right? We love them if they build value for us. So that's something else that I've been working a lot with practices over the last couple of years. And it's particularly very effective with the millennial generation.
Yeah, we have a membership for everything, right? It's not just our gym membership. It's like the hair club, the leggings club, the makeup club. Like, why not our med spa services as well? And
Yeah.
I love how if people have a hang up or I'm like, oh, I don't want to do a membership, then create something where it's exclusive or special or VIP or builds community around, signature treatment plans, or call it a club, right? Or anoint them a VIP. It's going to help them, one, not get undertreated and to
Yeah.
stick to a treatment plan. But also, help them not compare you to apples and oranges or be price checkers, right? Because they can only get, this result or this experience from your club, your membership, your VIP program. So I love that so much. And we've seen huge growth for clients as well by simply implementing that strategy, because every single time it when effectively implemented, it not only increases number of visits, but it increases like lifetime value and
Yes.
loyalty at the end of the day. So I think it's an amazing tool.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm bought into them. So I definitely encourage practices if you do not already have a membership program. And usually when I talk to practices or if I do a poll and I'm doing a lecture and I'm like, how many of you guys, it's something you want to do? Usually the majority of people's hands go up. It's the struggle that they have is they just don't know where to start.
Yeah.
So I think if we bring that conversation up, and I have plenty of resources and courses that are free on the PatientNow website around memberships. Anyone can go and watch to get templates and ideas and things like that. That's the big struggle I see is they just don't know, like they want to do it, they just have no clue where to start. So that's something I've been really investing a lot of my time with our clients in the industry is just helping everyone have a blueprint of where to start, what models can you build, and then what are some tips and tricks to achieve success with it.
So valuable because it's not as simple as just looking at other med spas memberships and be like, oh, I'm going to duplicate that and I'm
Yep.
going to be just as good as them because I saw one of their success stories that they're doing, 50 grand a month in reoccurring revenue, or they have 500 memberships, right?
Yeah.
It's how it's a tool and it's an amazing tool. But if you don't train your team and
Yeah.
then hold them accountable and track the data and market it properly, right,
Mhm.
that membership that is generating such great results for the med spa across town or across the country isn't going to do anything for you.
Yep. Totally agree. It
All of
is.
that
It's a
execution.
very, yeah, custom approach to it's not one size does not fit all.
Yeah.
There are different models out there. We have clients that have success with all different types, right? So you need to figure out what makes the most sense for your patient base, right? You all know your patient base better than anyone else. And also something that I think is overlooked too is get feedback from people, get feedback from your staff members, get feedback from maybe the patients who you have really close relationships with and get their thoughts, being like, hey, we're actually thinking of launching this membership program in 2025, whatever it is. Would this be something that would interest you, right? I think just getting feedback from people versus, spending a night, putting it together yourself and then implementing it and just hope that it does well, right? I think we always should be getting feedback from our team members and patients that we have really close relationships with that we can trust and hear their thoughts on it as well before we actually go out and implement something.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh my gosh, we could talk all day long about memberships, right? Well, Audrey, thank you so much for your time today. I think that you provided immense value around really the importance of not just forgetting about millennials, but really how it can grow revenue short term and long term at the end of the day, and by applying some best practices around collecting reviews and before and after pictures is not only going to, attract more and retain those millennial patients, but literally everyone. But if that really is the gateway to that untapped market in your med spa, then let's double down on that. And that's going to help, your entire business as a whole.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And it's been an honor and a pleasure to talk to you, Caitlin. And yeah, we could talk for probably 8 hours.
And so Audrey, share with my audience if they would like more information around, whether it's the millennial market or memberships, how can they find you?
Yeah, definitely. So I'm available. You can connect with me, email. It's aneff@patientnow.com. You can connect with me on Instagram or LinkedIn. Those are my two platforms of choice. You can just search my name and I'll pop up. And then if anyone's interested in learning more about PatientNow or RX Photo, which within our PatientNow platform, you can run any type of membership program. We have a full module built in at no additional cost, which makes it really easy for a lot of our clients because then everything is connected, including financial reporting, which we all love. Then you guys can definitely go to patientnow.com. But on the PatientNow website, there's tons of archived webinar courses that I teach as well that are free, completely free for anyone. If anyone's needing some additional business building tips around memberships or millennials, you name it.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much. And pretty much any aesthetic conference all across the country, Audrey is most often there and highlighted is one of the main keynote speakers. You're a great speaker. You provide so much value to the aesthetic industry as a whole, and I just thank you so much for spending time with us today and really sharing what an immense opportunity there is when tapping into that millennial market. So thanks so much for having joining us today, Audrey. And we'll have to hit up maybe memberships next time.